This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Let's talk about 92. Meltzer would write in the middle of June of 92, negotiations were supposed to take place over this past weekend. No word on what all they want involving Bob Backlund, believe it or not. And then a couple of weeks later, Dave would write, Bob Backlund reportedly turned down the WWF's offer. And then, of course, 2 weeks later, Bob Backlund debuted on July 1st at a show in White Plains, New York, beating Skinner, and repeated the same match the following night in Poughkeepsie. Backlund's return has brought up a lot of speculation. Is it simply Backlund realizing because of his age, this is his last chance to make decent money before he's done? Did Backlund want to stay with a steady pro wrestling job and with the apparent lack of interest in the UWFI and using him any longer feel this was his only chance? Or was it McMahon who made the initial pitch, feeling he wanted someone with Backlund's squeaky clean image, the same image that got him booed loudly in most Northeastern arenas towards the end of his run as the Hogan era began, as being someone who needs to push in the wake of all the bad publicity? So let's add some context to what Dave's hinting at here. We've got some scandals that have rocked the company, most notably the steroid era. Well, of all the things you're going to accuse Bob Backlund of being, a quote unquote drug user isn't one of them. I know you weren't exactly with the company here in July of 92. You're going to come back a couple of months later, maybe 6 weeks later. But do you believe that this was Vince's strategy to sort of like we would see a year later with Diesel, we need clean superstars? Or do you think Bob reached out just trying to realize, hey man, the clock is ticking here. I better get busy if I'm going to do this again?
Well, I think that it's a little bit of both. I think that Vince always had a soft spot for Bob Backlund, and Bob wanting to continue his career and have that last run, so to speak.
What's fun too is, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, I think that Vince was looking at it to give Bob that last run and to utilize him, and maybe we could get to that heel turn. Maybe we could get to something with Bob Backlund that hadn't realized before.
Let's bring some context to what we're talking about, because it's written about here, and it's always been portrayed that when Backlund comes back here in late 92, that he's so old. He's 42 years old. He's 1 year younger than Brock Lesnar is today. He's the exact same age as Jeff Hardy. Is it just those guys portray themselves more in a more youthful manner? I mean, obviously, Jeff's coming out dancing and he's got the face paint and the cool earrings and all that. Or is Bob one of those guys who just has always, sort of like Arn Anderson or JJ Dillon before him, he's always looked 40? What do you think? I mean, 42 is not old in wrestling by any stretch, but it certainly felt like he was a lot older here in 92. Why do you think that is?
Well, I thought that Bob was just so damn youthful in general when Bob was the champion. I think Bob always looked a lot younger than he actually was. And coming back, it was, that grizzled veteran almost of Bob Backlund, but he still had a lot of that boyish howdy-doody charm.
Well, and one of the things you guys have lined up for him is a return to Madison Square Garden against Rick Martel. That's a big deal, obviously. And then you're going to put him in with a bunch of tapings in late October and early November. But Meltzer would say he wasn't getting over at all at the tapings. And I guess maybe that makes sense. I mean, this is the era where we've got some real over the top characters like the Repo Man and Doink and shit like that. Did you guys know it would take time to get him over unless you were giving him a silly gimmick? And was a silly gimmick ever considered?
No, we wanted Bob Backlund, and we knew that Bob Backlund was a gimmick in and of itself from the standpoint of being real and just being Bob Backlund. You turn that up and you can tweak that a little bit. I think people were gonna get back with it. And to those that felt that he was out of touch, and to those that felt that Bobby maybe had passed his prime, look, no one could ever argue his physical, just what shape he was in and what he could do.
Well, you got to see what shape he was in and what he could do at the Royal Rumble in 93. I mean, that was really Bob Backlund's pay-per-view, as crazy as it may seem. He comes in at number 2. He stays in the match for over an hour. He's even part of the final 3 with Yokozuna and Randy Savage. It feels like, you know, as long as I've been watching wrestling, you guys find at least one guy to really focus on and feature in the Royal Rumble. And in 93, it was Bob Backlund, was it not?
Well, yeah, Bob was definitely somebody that we featured because of the time that he was allowed to be in there. Plus, there was that nostalgia of a certain amount of the audience going, oh my God, they're going with Bob Backlund and Brett at WrestleMania. They're going to have Bob Backlund be the champion again. So you had people thinking that was going to happen, and it was a return for Bob. So it was good timing to be able to tell his story.
In February, you guys put him with Shawn Michaels, and you do count out finishes. Meltzer would write that he gets no reaction coming to the ring, but once they get going and they're more than 15 minutes deep into the match, the fans really start to get into it. But of course, in Philadelphia, Backlund gets, well, booed out of the building, and they love Shawn Michaels. But that's probably just Philly likes the heels, right?
Yeah, but you were also fighting an uphill battle too with Shawn. People were loving Shawn, and even then, and Backlund, as good as he was in the ring, there was a certain segment of the audience that didn't want him. It just felt like you're trying to tell us this goody two shoes guy, and you're presenting him in a way, Mr. Positivity and Mr. Goody Two Shoes, that people didn't want to hear that.
Talk to me a little bit about Shawn working with Backlund. We know, you know, the rumor and innuendo is Shawn was not always easy to get along with. How did he feel about working with Bob Backlund here?
Well, my recollection is Shawn loved it because he was working with Bob Backlund every night. It was kind of a night off because they just would go out, work hard, and be able to call it in the ring and feel it. And it was really good old school action. It was two guys that knew what they were doing, going out and performing in front of a new audience every night.
It's also announced that Razor Ramon is going to be facing Bob Backlund at Backlund's WrestleMania debut, WrestleMania 9. Of course, we know Razor's going to win in 3 minutes and 45 seconds. It's an inside cradle. Fans are cheering Razor. Meltzer would even note this is probably the first pinfall loss that Backlund had done in the company since like 77. But he said it was a terrible match and gave it -1 star. It was even voted the worst match on the card by the readers of the Wrestling Observer. And let's not forget, that show also had Undertaker versus Giant Gonzalez, and they hated this one more. What was it about Razor and Bob that just didn't click at WrestleMania 9?
I think clash of styles, clash of personalities, just didn't mesh well at all.
Is there any concern at this point after the big push at Royal Rumble? I mean, it really is a big push too, to come in 2, last over an hour, be part of the final 3. That's a big deal. But then they give you a shot on WrestleMania, your first WrestleMania, and it's just the shits. Does anybody second guess, hey man, maybe this is a failed experiment?
Not really, no, because it just kind of reaffirmed that they want to boo him.
Do you think, how different do you think Bob's, because his experience working with the company is totally different here than it was the first time. And as noted in the Observer, it's his first loss, clean in the company in forever. Nearly decades at that point. How did he assimilate to sort of this new way of doing business?
I think, Bob came in with an open mind, and Bob came in with a great attitude, just, wanting to work and be a part of everything. other than goofs that write dirt sheets in California that think win-loss records are the end-all, be-all, wins and losses are important. But it's, when you sit there and look at someone that, he hasn't had a clean pinfall, I don't think that the majority, and what I say by that is the majority of the audience, not the smart fans that eat it, breathe it, and live it. Those of us that are so close to it that we overthink those things, I don't think the general audience does.
Well, listen, I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying the business has certainly evolved. I mean, this card had El Matador and Papa Shango and Tatanka and the Head Shrinkers and Doink the Clown and Razor Ramon and Mr. Perfect and a dead guy named The Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez. It's a different style of presentation of the WWF compared to, this modern version of WWF here in 93. And before, he was working on top. Now he's not. So it feels like maybe I'm going to lose more. Maybe I'm going to be paid less. And maybe I'm going to wrestle a goddamn clown. I mean, this is just different. Can we agree?
Sure it is. It is different. But Bob was embracing it.
It is interesting, though, that you still think there's an allure in Madison Square Garden, because even after a poor showing at WrestleMania, come June of 93, he's working on top with Bret Hart. Did you think, hey, maybe it's just the Northeast, that's our honey hole? Maybe even more specifically, just MSG, and maybe the fans in Vegas just weren't as familiar with Backlund as they should have been, but maybe dads and granddads are taking their kids and saying, oh, now you got to watch this guy. Boy, when I was your age, that type of deal.
Yeah, I think so.
Great. Bret bends Backlund in a long, clean match. Meltzer would say it was described to him as being really bad. And it was Backlund's first pinfall loss at the arena that he used to headline for like every month for 6 years. There's 9,000 fans there, and it's the first time he's lost at MSG. So a pretty remarkable deal, but 9,000 fans, that's still got to feel a little disappointing if he used to be your top guy, right?
Yeah, but again, he's being put in here as not the top guy. He wasn't the one that we were looking to go in and draw this house. And you've got a package at this point. And Bob I don't think Bob with his single attractions was ever the draw when Bob was champion. Bob had a lot of dressing around him and an awful lot of help. So I never, from the time that he was champion until the time later, did anybody think, okay, the company's on Bob Backlund's back. That wasn't the case.
By August, Meltzer would write, major roster cuts will be made over the next few weeks. The WWF will be cutting back to one house show per night, with the final night of double shots being on August 15th. Among the names who will be cut, leaving, or receiving fewer dates and staying under contract, but mostly working mainly indie dates, are Bob Backlund, among others. Was there a thought that, hey, maybe this isn't working as well as we hoped, and we're going to cut Backlund back? Or is Dave just incorrect? I know you usually jump at the chance to say he's incorrect, so I guess I'm asking
wrong.
you.
I mean, did that happen? No, it didn't. So guess what? Dave was wrong.
Well, let's fast forward, to the Royal Rumble 94. Backlund makes a 30-second appearance to be thrown out by Diesel, which is pretty remarkable. I mean, why is Backlund even still here? I mean, a year it was his show. A year ago, it was his show, and now he's in and out in 30 seconds, and he's not even on WrestleMania 10 in Madison Square Garden. So, this used to be your top guy in this building for years and years and years, and now we're going to run our biggest show in that building. He's not even there.
And again, he wasn't the big draw for years and years and years. He was the champion. There's a difference, and there was definitely a difference at that time. And as far as the Royal Rumble, that's a great story. The guy that lasted over an hour the year before comes in and this big new monster Diesel eliminates him in 30 seconds. That's a holy shit moment for Diesel and good storytelling for Bobby, because you think, okay, well, Bob did so good last year. Oh my God, that's a holy shit moment for Diesel.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.